second. Santosh, hi, and welcome to Heritage Beku.
Thanks, Priya. Thanks for having me here. I'm just excited to share my story, and thanks for this opportunity.
It is such a it's just wonderful for us from Heritage Beku. Ever since we connected up, I think we have a common friend, and some of the work that you shared. I was on the way to Rishikesh, and I remember saying, "Oh my gosh, I must spend some time and figure out what this guy is doing because it's a beautiful memory project and really something of a tribute to Bangalore that I'd like to get into more detail." Again, so suitable to the Heritage Beku ethos and vision, and it was really nice for me to connect back when I returned and talk about your worldview, your transition, your vision on this, and what you hope to do. So this conversation has been in the making for a while, and I'm really looking forward to it because we know what Heritage Beku has been doing, but this time around, I think what we really want to know is what Santosh Mahale is doing about Bangalore. So I want to quickly give us just a quick introduction. I mean, Santosh, I mean, this avatar of yours is primarily of an artist, but you do so many things. You are a quintessential Bangalorean. You've been here for a large part of your childhood. You've moved on to other cities like Calcutta and Chennai too. But you moved to Melbourne, I think, what, about 20 years ago, 15 years ago?
No, I was Melbourne 6 years. I was in the States and many other places. So I've
Many
been
other things.
outside Bangalore for a good 25 years now. Yeah.
Got it, got it. So it's been a while, and Melbourne is now. Would I be right in saying that Melbourne is now home?
Yes, finally. Yes.
So there you go. And one of the things that I do recall is, I mean, of course, like many people here, you have a background in engineering and management consulting. And what you've transitioned to is this rather unique kind of art, which is a fusion of creative expression, almost architectural precision in terms of the way you look at the city. And I think some of your excitement about looking at new places, and you've done this with San Francisco, you've done it with a couple of other cities, but this one is
Yeah.
special for you. And what I love is the fact that you've incorporated so many different elements, whether it's cartography, which is about maps, or heritage architecture, which you've spent a lot of time on trying to understand more, local cuisine, and I see birds are a big motive in terms of what you do. So your canvases are, for me, uniquely memory projects, really, just tributes in a very, very, what is the word for it? Very layered and very creative and granulated view of what the city means across time and space. And I would sort of stress on the time and space because that's really, I think, the heart of what you do and why it means so much to us at Heritage Beku. And the fact that you are sort of superimposing your own artistic expression on a very logical structure of your memories of a city or of a place is absolutely fantastic. So, while I mean, the detailing of the work, the fact that you primarily work with oils, you you've got narratives which have been appreciated by many people. You've incorporated natural and cultural, heritage in your works, is something that we need to talk more about. But for me, and I'm taking a little more of time than we probably need to, but one of the things that I think is really important is for us to, sort of delve in and jump in uh, to the melding of memory, um, art, nostalgia, and an ever evolving city, in this case, Bangalore, and how it comes together in your work. So, Santosh, without further ado, over to you. I have in front of me, a little bit about your exhibition. And then before I just want to sort of share a little bit about the work. This is something you did specially for us, and I'd like you to talk about it later. The Krumbigal Hall,
Yeah.
which has been the trigger for Heritage Beko to have started, and Bugle Rock, and the impression of Lal Bagh, which are just such a lovely one. This kind of work, which if you go into detail, I mean, each space and each area sort of superimposed on the cartography of Bangalore is so meaningful, whether it's a flower or a building or a memory. I love the way you've put it all together. In this case, I see here,
Lalbagh.
yeah, I mean, very different view of Lal Bagh, including the bandstand and Crombigal Hall in its own way, and which is not there anymore, of course. And yeah, so this is going to be something we're really looking forward to seeing in person. So walk us through this. This is a very wide set of questions, but Santosh, tell us
Yeah.
your story and how it really translates from a person who's been all over the world but coming back to his home city. And this is your tribute to Bangalore. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Priya. And first of all, I want to say that my first conversation, I was so happy that you were one of those persons who had seen my art and sort of playing back to me your emotions, and it's something I don't often get. So I really appreciate you sort of sharing that, and it just helped me build the conversation from there on. So thanks again for this, and thanks for giving me the
Pleasure.
chance to speak about my art. So for everyone, essentially, yes, like everything you said, there's layers in my art, and that's just like we as humans have layers of experience or things that have shaped us, right? So for me, I'm a 1980 born kid in Bangalore. Moved Was born in Mumbai, but came here at 85, and so I lived that late 80s, early and 90s, right? That's the Bangalore I lived in before I went to study and then overseas, right? And the Bangalore in those days was essentially, even though I didn't know Crumbigal Hall, if you had, even if you told a kid or an old person to paint Bangalore, I think 9 out of 10 people would paint like some green space and some red buildings. So that's how, and I'm just trying to, I'll go into the details, but I just want to show how much heritage or a building or something has an importance in someone's orientation of the city, right? And then, of course, as you become more sophisticated and absorb more, you take in the other details, right? But if starting from there, for me, as just going very little into the journey without going into a lot, but art was always in my back, right? So it was whether I was cooking or decorating my home or my garden, it was always expressed in different ways. Painting and drawing were just some things that I would do as a pastime, but not, never even considered it as, as a profession then. But it was always there. And then I think
Yeah.
what strengthened over time was my subject, right? I just by virtue, and perhaps somewhere down, I had this deepest passion for exploring places. So perhaps I took every opportunity to study or work in a different place, and maybe subconsciously started absorbing all these places, right? So now I had that experience of Bangalore, which was there, but then I'm also now building experiences of living in all these places. And I want to emphasize living, because as tourists, when we visit a place, it's one thing, but when you actually stay in a place, even let's say a couple of months or a year, that's when you start going beneath the layer and saying, this is what makes the city, right? Or this is the pattern. There's some reason the colonials built red buildings in Bangalore, and that doesn't happen in Chennai or in Mumbai, right? And in some reason, garden spaces are there with roads with cars going through the gardens, and that doesn't happen in Hyderabad or Delhi. And I think it's when you stay, you start absorbing this, and that's how perhaps my subject started strengthening, even though I was not expressing myself as in through art, right? And somewhere in 2008, I was in a trip to London, and I came back and I was like, you know what? I'm not buying another teacup or a tea towel, and I'm just going to come and paint a canvas of my memories of London. And so there's from there, it's almost like a souvenir for myself, became like, what I would do for the walls of my house, right? And then that happened for 15 years, of course, at its own pace with having a young family and a job like consulting. But the passion was there. It's almost like the backlog of places I had to paint was just growing, but I kept absorbing, right? And I think a lot of I'm very sensitive when I say this. COVID had its impact, and some terrible impact
Yeah.
for many people. But for someone like me who had all this built up energy and backlog of things to express, and suddenly I've been given these extra hours of not having to travel, not having to commute, to work from home. I think I was fortunate in whatever made me to choose, say, like, let me channel all that energy into art and see where it goes. And also, you talked about Melbourne, and I said finally, because I've actually lived in maybe 8 to 10 cities all over the world in not more than 2 3 years in a city at times. So Melbourne
Yeah.
for the last 6 years has been a record in a sense, and now we have a kid who's 9 years old, and there are other reasons why, but of course, it allowed me to grow bigger and bolder, right? Because when I was in a rental space, I was just painting small and trying to think about, because I'm a very rational person, right? I'm an artist, but I'm an engineer. I'm highly analytical, and I'm thinking of the practical considerations, right? And I think that nicely comes through into my art, right? Because for me, when I now talk about like the post-COVID time, where I said, this is what I'm doing. I want to push and see how far it goes. I was fortunate that the environment in Australia, even as a male in his 40s, working part time was absolutely normal, and not working part time to take care of a kid or to do some support, but really to follow your passion was accepted, and I could be myself without having to hide that from anyone, right? That I'm actually painting on Mondays, right? And so I feel sort of telling this in a condensed way, but really to try to emphasize that all those layers of my experience really are now coming out in this art, right? And this there's a layer of deep passion to just explore. There is a thing of sharing these details. I'm very curious. Perhaps as a consultant, we are meant to be that, so we can absorb all the information and then play it back to the execs, in a quick manner. And lastly, we all love to tell stories. People love to tell stories through talks or walks, or they want to write books. But for me, I found a happy medium in telling these stories through my artwork. And it's also perhaps because I never lived with artists or grew up or studied with artists. I knew that while inside I was very artistic, people around me had an opinion of art, or people around me didn't connect as much as art with art, right? And I felt like, if in my approach of, hey, there is a story here. It's not just about brushstrokes and colors, and there is a story here which is visual, perhaps speaks better than words. And if you connect emotionally and then perhaps get curious to learn more, then I've already succeeded in what I'm trying to do, right? So that's sort of coming to where I've landed with this approach. And as you were explaining through that Bangalore in the 90s, project, memory project, as you call it rightly, today, I was talking to fellow expats, and one such expat that I know, she studied at UEC, architecture at UEC, and she's been in Melbourne for more than me, like 30 years. And she was talking about how every time she comes to Bangalore, actually she gets more disoriented from the Bangalore she knew, right? And again, this is not sort of a criticism. Every city has to grow, and people need to be given the basics of the Maslow hierarchy before you talk about
Yeah.
higher levels, right? So, but this is more about how does one, and not just for expats like us, right? It would be even for a local, as you grow in Bangalore, what are the 3 or 4 places you'll go back after 10 years and feel like this place gives me the same memories like it did 10 years back? And we need all the conveniences. I'm not trying to say we should not get more convenient, or but there is this value in memory. And I think we all cherish memories for some reasons, be it with our family, and therefore even a place, memories associated with a place are very special, right? For our mental health and just happiness, right? And so that's where it goes. This project essentially, I wanted to put that Bangalore together that we never see, and therefore chose the 90s Bangalore, because there was a tipping point, I think, when the IT boom happened. The development took place very fast, but perhaps for 40 years, Bangalore was pretty much the same, plus minus a few buildings, right? And therefore, in that painting you saw, I deliberately didn't have a single IT building, and the tallest buildings were the Unity building and the TV tower. The sparrows used to frequent us frequently. I don't know, but even in the rains, those Kambli Poochies used to come, and we were trying to navigate them. And I
So
somehow,
scared, right? They would get into your clothes
exactly,
and you'd be eating for
and
days.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right. So those little details, you'd walk the streets and you'll find, these little buds of the African tulips, and you could spout water out of them and play. Other day, a friend, when I told this, a friend of mine, she was saying that how the gulmohar trees, and the little, those petal-like things that would come would become like artificial nails.
Yes,
So
that is so strange. It's so true. We used to put them on. They were green on the top and orange underneath. So yeah,
correct, you
I
could peel
remember
them.
that.
So, like small trivial things, but again, I think perhaps now that's a different conversation that we can't even perhaps walk in many places and experience that. But essentially, this painting tries to bring that memory. And what I'm trying to say here is, I'm not saying that nature is the only thing that needs to be protected, only trees or birds. Everything that I just said, is really collectively the identity of Bangalore, right? So that
Hmm.
Bangalore in the 90s that I left, coming back, to me, it was green spaces, which meant, trees, trees, trees everywhere. And then these trees giving these weird things like, these tulip buds to helicopter seeds to like, cannonball flowers. And in those days, we didn't even know that they were, not native trees. We just took what we received. And then there's these red heritage buildings everywhere, and everything in between, right? So this is the collective identity of a city, which is formed by both the natural and man-made structures. And therefore, through my art, I want to give equal space to both, and then bring them together, right?
Santosh, thanks for sharing that because in the bits and pieces are what makes this exciting. The bits and pieces seem spontaneous, but if you look at it with the background of your art, you know it's cartographic. It's still very structured because
Correct.
you have actually put things where they should be, but there is a certain fluidity about it. There's a certain amount of flow, which is true of memory, right? So
Yes.
here's an interesting bit where, as you rightly said, your structural kind of approach as an engineer, as a consultant, and your artistic leaning sort of comes together in some very interesting melding, and produces something which we can relate to. And as I said, these bits and pieces remind me of a kaleidoscope because it shifts. It's constantly shifting. Like when you said those things, about the gulmohar leaves, I said, oh, yes, I remember. Or that little plant, I forget what it is, but when you broke the leaf, it had milk came out at the other end. And if it came into your eye, you were blind. I mean, that's what of
Correct.
course, it wasn't true.
Yes,
But,
of course.
this is the kind of story we grew up as with kids. And there are so many things. There are also triggers. I'm going to intersperse this, this free flow because it's so wonderful to walk through this Bangalore with you. But I would go back to one thing that you said, which I thought important, uh, of connecting people up, with knowing and with relating. Like they say, and this is a favorite phrase of mine, I think it's Jacques Cousteau who says, you cannot love what you don't know,
Correct.
and you cannot save what you don't love. So Heritage Beku, to a large extent, is about knowing.
Yeah.
It's about trying to get people to love and praying like hell that at some point we can save. For me, that's the journey: the know, the love, the save. I think that's what Heritage Beku relates and resonates with. Uh, and if you look at that, and again, moving forward to triggers that all of us have, which sort of pushed us into this. Um, you look at as an organization, as Heritage Beku, I know a trigger has been, and in fact, Alia is at a conference, otherwise she would be joining us now, and Alia Prumbigal. Um, you know, for us, many things have gone wrong in terms of heritage in the city, and it's
Mhm.
very easy to chest beat and wail
Yeah.
and scream and call upon the gods of saying, how could this happen to our city? And then there's something about trying to do something about it, knowing that you can't always win, but taking your low-hanging fruit, taking your fights where you can. And Krumbickle Hall was one of the reasons why I think Heritage Beku was a citizen initiative, and the first and only citizen initiative in Bangalore came up and became so, strong and so impactful because we wept when a building that that was so resonant of Lalbagh, so resonant of a man who literally built some of the foundations and the landscaping and the architecture of the city in so many ways. Krumbigal went overnight, and not because there was a villain in the piece, but because we people who were involved just didn't think it was a big deal. So that
Right.
was our trigger. My That was an organization trigger. I mean, that was an
Yeah.
institutional trigger, I would say. And the other thing is, if you look at, um, as a personal trigger, I know that the day that maybe you, I don't know whether you remember it, but when Golden Threshold on St. Mark's Road, the prettiest Romeo and Juliet balcony, the prettiest building I've ever seen, when that came down,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I see what comes up in its place, and the
Yeah.
ghastliness of it, the sheer, the commercialness of it. It makes me cringe. And these are some of personal triggers which said, we can't let this happen. And how do we stop it? Another is the way the metro came and took over NG Road.
Yes.
A lack of collective action. Heritage Beku was not around at that time. There
Yeah.
was a wonderful person called Ravi Chandra who kept saying, I mean, Ravi, saying,
Yes.
bury the metro, bury the metro. We had
Yeah.
to let it go underneath. We didn't have the collective. Today, Bangalore will not let you do one thing to
Right.
spoil its city without at least
Yes.
stepping up and speaking for it.
Of
And
course.
that's what I'm so proud of the city, in addition to everything else it does. So these are the triggers that kind of pushed us towards doing something. So I'm on the feeling and the acting, that mode, and I'm talking about that. um I'd like to know, what was your trigger for, because yours is not just about the art and the city. There's
Yeah.
also a strong element of preservation and ownership in what you do. What is your trigger, Santosh?
It is similar. And, perhaps, and firstly, let me acknowledge and thank you, Priya, for what you're doing. And I can't, like, like you said, the excitement of that first call, because, here I am, like, I was just painting in Melbourne, so far away, not connected with the network here or anything, didn't even know something like this existed. And I was doing my art. And to find, groups like yourselves, and meeting Ravi, and now getting part of the Hubba, and, the broader, I'm just so excited that, like you said, I mean, let's all look forward. I mean, I know we can't undo the things that have happened, but we have a future, and there are a lot more heritage buildings still remaining, thankfully, and we can do a, collectively we can do so. I want to acknowledge that, and again thank what you, Aditi, and all others are doing, with Heritage Waco and other such movements. But coming to your question, I think I was, everyone has examples, right? And I have my own
Yeah.
sweet examples which were closer to me. For me, meeting in cash pharmacy was, we didn't have Google Maps. For us, it was, let's meet at cash pharmacy, or, drop me off at Mayo Hall. Even though you're not getting dropped off at Mayo Hall, you may be getting dropped off at Galaxy down the road, but it was, the whole area was Mayo Hall. And I'm just giving these two examples because, again, we all know very well cash pharmacy is no longer there. Mayo Hall, the color has changed, and again, these are, going along the examples. The other thing that made me feel a bit, strongly about this is, I knew cash pharmacy as just a little board. It looked heritage; it was a corner, but it's only when I started painting it, Priya, that I saw all the heritage layers behind. It was actually a 3-4 layered building, and each window was ornate. As an artist, and I know everyone probably doesn't appreciate it the same way, but, just like for me, anything and everything is art, but this is handmade, and it's taken countless hours. It can never be done today. I mean, not because we can't do it, but when a machine does it, it won't be the same, and it's just not possible to train up a human, or feasible to do that, right? So this is what.
Santosh, one of the things, I won't
Yeah.
interrupt you. One of the things I think people don't understand, and that's happened with Krumbigal Hall, is that, how do you explain that the collective consciousness, the memory that you have about a place,
Yeah.
is not just about the stones and the bricks and the iron bar, the iron
Yeah.
platform, whatever that make it happen. It's about the memories and the history that each brick holds. You know,
Yeah.
it is so difficult to explain. And I didn't get it because I, frankly, was very embarrassed about the fact that I'm feeling it. I'm saying, oh, I'm one of those people, anything goes, we want everything to be the same, no change. I felt almost that I was being a bit of a crybaby about it, that
Yeah.
progress happens. Until I met many other people who also resonated. And this is not a new thing. I mean, heritage is
Yes.
something really important to preserve. And Santosh, it goes across natural heritage, which is the whole,
Yeah.
the whole Tamarind Tree, the Cubbon Park, the Lal Bags of the world, and cultural heritage. We've been doing a
Yes.
lot of interesting work around, for example, Kadlikai Pareshe or the other festivals that we have, where we ourselves are so disconnected from it and we are finding so many things. I love the fact that we
Yes.
are on a journey of discovery ourselves. So somebody thinks
Absolutely.
that when they meet me, they say, oh, Priya, you must be know. I said, no, I don't know. And I'm happy not knowing because it's a discovery for me, you know.
Yeah.
So that thing about, like when you say Cash Pharmacy or Mayo Hall, you could find a new Kumbigal Hall. You could find a new place which is almost as good. You saw the pictures of Cubbon Park police
Yeah.
station, right?
Yes.
It was interesting that they left the old station, crumbling as it
Yes.
is, thankfully,
Thankfully.
and built something that they felt kind of stood for Cubbon Park police station. I would not argue too much with it because I think it is the intent,
Yes.
rather than, anything else. So I would respect that. But triggers and memories and cities are very, very closely intertwined. Your connection to a city, what you do for it, your love for the city, your ability to feel that sense of belonging is related to multiple factors. And public
Absolutely.
spaces are a large part of that. And that's something that we can talk about later. But I see that in the almost deliberate jigsaw of your paintings, where you can move with a bird, a flower, a building, a park, and it just feels right.
Yeah.
So when you sit down and you looked at, say, a Malleshwaram, for example,
Yes.
and you conceive this, I get your background. You're at the end of it, as I said, you're engineer, you're management grad, you've got a certain, and you're a consultant, so you have a ability to look at something in a very some summary fashion. You're able to
Yeah.
say, how do I bring this together? I find this interesting because what you're saying is, I will look at something, bring it together on those multiple layers, and I will present it to you in a way that you can digest, and
Yes.
in such a way that you can digest it across layers. So if you want a quick and dirty kind of, you want that quick
Yeah.
input of like one feel about it, you've got that going. You want
Yeah.
to go into detail, there are a couple more layers you can go into. Then you want the story, there's something else. And then you want the history, there's something else. So you
Correct.
can do this, across your.
Yeah.
So do you think that's something that happens with you?
Yeah,
How do you
absolutely.
conceive?
Just as an engineer, probably everyone here knows the Venn diagram. It's a circle diagram, right? So just using my, so if I had to just put a graph of like how I spend time, it's almost like 50% of my time is composition and thinking. It's all about, first of all, the feeling that I want to paint Malaysian. Malaysian is special, and just
Mm.
talking about heritage, we just lost one heritage building, an Art Deco building, Krishna Bhavan, for a
Oh,
gold jewelry store, right? So it upsets me, and I'm bringing my emotions on my Malaysian painting, because Krishna Bhavan and the button idlis are very part of the whole. My is an icon in my painting, right?
yes.
But your point, 50% is on the thinking. What's the composition? What are the colors that define Malaysian? What are the patterns? What do I want to put? What I don't want to put? And how does it all come together? Then I spent about 30 minutes to draw, because like you said, there is this, the engineering side, the architectural side, saying, I want precision enough to give people a strong point to hold on and then build their memories. I don't want to give
Yeah.
them something very fuzzy. And then gradually it's my artistic side that takes the last 20-30%, right? So that's where the mina can be bigger than the building, and there is the Kadu Malaysia temple for some reason stands out, because we have fertility stones in all of our temples, but suddenly you see this one temple and then you got like hundreds of stones in multiple levels, and like, so what's happening here, right? Was there some, and it starts asking me questions, like usually it's 5 or 6 stones under one tree, and then suddenly you have this temple with like like steps, and it's almost like a temple for these stones. And like there's so much, if there's this Nandi temple that was rediscovered a few years back, and all these stories just get me like excited, and I'm like, how do I bring it all together? And then to your point, as management consultant, we have been told, you need to see, boil the ocean. We are actually told to boil the ocean, but come back with one summary slide, because the CA doesn't have time to look at everything, right? And I think, Priya, that's exactly, if I had to put my art in consulting terms, I'm spending a lot of time researching and bringing together, but I want to answer the question of Malaysian in one canvas. I don't want to give you 15 canvases and say this is my exhibition on Malaysian. But if I had to say, you put Malaysian on a 3 by 3 feet
Yeah.
canvas, what how would it be defined, right? And so that's probably that very conscious approach to that art then lets me, of course, start in a structured way, but then I become loose and then play around with the colors, roads, and shapes to bring it all together, right? Because in the end, it still needs to look like a painting that's made by one artist and an artist who has a consistent signature style, right? So it's not um, it's not just a jigsaw puzzle or a collage, right? It's in the end, I'm trying to bring my signature style out, and that's when I think the artistic style or the creativity takes over the rational side of my brain and say, okay, now let me make it in a way that people will connect to it emotionally, and then start coming into the details and asking those questions, right?
Yeah. No, it makes complete sense. And I don't know whether you'd agree with me about this, but there is no exact parallel. But when I look at, I don't know whether you remember Photo Flash having a picture, having a cartoon of Bangalore done by the very iconic Paul Fernandez.
Okay.
I must send it to you because there is a
Sure,
certain
you should.
resemblance. There, it's more of a cartoon kind of a focus,
Yes.
but everything was all over, and it was instantly relatable. I mean,
Correct.
whether it was a Lido theater, whether it was BRV, it was instantly relatable. So there is that element of almost finding your story of your city through those pictures, you know,
Yes.
and pointing. It's a very visual connect. So, I mean, it may be a bit of a stretch, but I don't know whether do you find any motivation or anything about that? Do you remember those pictures
I
or
I
those pictures?
see. I'm always connected to nostalgia through I always like murals. I think the other way I've described my painting is the very first painting I did of Melbourne when post lockdown. I said I didn't have a wall to do a mural, so let me bring the mural into my living room. And so I took this big 4 feet by 4 feet canvas, big for me in those days, and I said, I painted the background like bricks, and I said that's my mural, right? So to your question, I've certainly been inspired by a lot of muralists and people who, because usually it's muralists who tell these stories of the cities, right? And even in Bangalore, even in the 80s and 90s that I grew up, you would have people painting the buildings of Bangalore, and one like Lal Bagh would have like a series of birds of Bangalore, if you remember, like very vaguely. And I know we were not good at preserving that artwork, but there would be this artist who would come and paint all the animals, and then there'll be an artist who will paint all the buildings, and under the bridges, or they'll find with their limited resources. And I feel I'm certainly inspired by the mural movement, but again, I'm trying to do all of this in in the convenience of having it in your living room, because I feel that's what I sort of relate to. I love stories. I love these discoveries, and uh, one of the things I've been told, Priya, much like yourselves, is every time people see my art, they see something different, and then it triggers a story, a conversation, or something, and which is what I really enjoy as well, to be involved. And I learned so much in the process. Just to not to
I'm
digress,
sure
but
you do.
you know, I've
Go
I've
ahead, go
done a
ahead.
painting of Kurg. I've done a painting of Kurg. It's a smaller painting which will
Mhm.
be in the exhibition, and I had to celebrate the Omkareshwara temple there, which is a Shiva temple, but it's
Mhm.
known. The interesting fact for me was it is the only temple with a Muslim architecture. And when someone
Ah,
saw that, they were like, it's interesting because there was this history of Tipu trying to conquer Medicare, and it's interesting
yeah.
that they did that. And it just triggers, and like, I know history is history, but even if it triggers for people to go and to learn a bit more about it, or I at that point didn't know about this, this history of Kurg, and it got me to read more about Kurg, right? So I think I learn as much as I think I hope people do, because when different people see different things in that same building, right, and they have different memories, and what I have provided is enough structure to trigger that conversation.
Yeah, good point. Do you look at yourself, Santosh, uh, now? It's dichotomous to ask you, but do you look at yourself primarily now as a career consultant or as an artist? Which avatar do you relate to more now?
It's I want to and I don't know if whichever artists see these see this podcast, and I don't know if Septar and the others here are have a background in art, but I have the utmost respect for artists now, after doing this stint. I think it's I've been a competitive swimmer. I've actually studied engineering, done gone to good universities, worked hard is what I'm trying to say, but I've not
Yeah.
worked so hard in my life as this avatar of an artist, right? So I
Hmm.
want to just acknowledge that, and it's something that keeps me grounded to say that it's a privilege to be an artist. It's really a privilege to be an artist, and I don't take that lightly. And therefore, and I'm just open, Priya, in this journey because there are obviously the known constraints of being an artist, which I don't want to go into, but I think for me, what I'm trying to look, Priya, is post Bird's Eye Bangalore, I've got another 6 months of my sabbatical, and I want to use that to find happy balance, right? I've already worked part time. I have now taken a years off. I think I have, and I've pushed myself enough to do something in this break and the time I've had, and I feel I'm hoping that the answers will become clearer as I end and I find some sort of happy balance. But for sure, I'll be painting. I don't know what else I will be doing, but for sure, I will be painting.
So that's a commitment that new part of you and that commitment to this exploration is defined. That's something you're going to be doing, and you're
Yes,
going to be doing everything
absolutely.
else. It's a very inappropriate question for me to ask you, with like, who do you identify with more? Because honestly, we are people who have different lives that we embrace and different universes that we embrace. In fact, one of the reasons why I named my company Multiversal is because I believe we belong to multiple universes and we should embrace
Yeah,
every one of them. So the question
absolutely.
I asked you was really, completely opposite of what I really believe in, because I do believe you should, and you must embrace
Yeah.
your different universes, because these universes are very powerful. They're very, they're tough. You have to invest to be in that universe, and so on. So it's uphill, and you know there's also, and I find a lot of people who have added on or moved into a slightly different space. There's a sense of discomfort saying, they hesitate with, so what do you do? uh I'm an artist. It's just more difficult
Yes.
to say. But that's a different space, so we don't really need to go into that. But you come from a space, and I think you should, and you are very grateful for the fact that, however tough COVID has been for most of us, and the one of the two things that have triggered is a respect for time and space, and a
Yeah.
respect for individuality. And it
Yes.
has given you your new life in some ways of
Yes.
exploration. And Australia, with the respect for the individuality, the way that, you know, your different universes can balance. You
Yeah.
know, there's a certain sense of legitimacy, a certain sense of blessing that comes from being in the country that you are. Um, do you think that if you were in a slightly different space or a slightly more constricted work culture, it would have been difficult for you?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm very unapologetically sharing this. And there'll be a lot of the Australians who will come for the exhibition, including the opening. Yes, I would have not, and it's Priya. I'm saying this after being in those places, right? So I've been in the US, I've been in the Middle East, I've studied in Europe, and it's not like it's just harder. And I'm not saying that the world will not change. Maybe 10, 15 years down the road, what I'm doing may be just a normal thing for anyone. Like they'll come to their 40s or something and then choose to do something completely different. And but what I'm saying is in the years that I lived and I worked, which is mostly the early part of this decade, or the 2000s. I think it would have been harder for me to do this anywhere else. And I think I think what we find in Australia is there's a general respect for that space, as you said. And it's not that, I think we are productive in the time we are given, right? And, I always go back to my swimming days. When we were swimming, we had so little time for studies that most of us swimmers were good at studies because we were so productive in that limited time, right? And I think just loosely applying that, I think in Australia, what we see it is, you give your work this time, do it well, and then go back and pursue your passion, be it sport, be it running an Ironman, or just doing art. And there is respect for, like you said, I would have not probably initially, I was hesitating. Oh, you know what, I'm an artist. But now I proudly say that, and I just get some interesting conversations following that, right? Including some difficult questions which make me, like I said, I think this is all part of life. Art, being an artist is not an easy life. And I think more I get faced those hard questions, it only makes me better prepared, I think, right? So I'm not like in some illusion of what life is to be an artist, right? So yes, certainly, Priya. But I'm saying, I'm not saying it's only that you could do this in Australia. I'm just saying that it's a matter of time. I think, just like I said, when I went part time, even in Australia, I was one of the few males in their 40s who would work part time, right? And I think it's becoming more common, and it's only a matter of time where these kind of things will be common, and people will find that happy balance between what they want to earn and what they want to do, and how they want to build their identity.
True that. True that. This is, I think, a very valid perspective. Um, I want to just go over, the conversation we had about the large piece on the city, which is a combination of 39 small pieces.
Yeah,
What what triggered that, and why this approach of, you know, almost
yeah,
like, what is the word for it? A real jig, what is your
yeah.
vision on that?
Thanks for asking that. And for those who are not seeing it, this is Priya is talking about the main installation in my exhibition, which will start on the 20th. It's 39 canvases, a square foot canvas, 12 inch by 12 inch, which will together form the map of BBMP, or the Greater Bangalore. And this is, again, just painted in my signature style. It's just that, it's really big, and it'll have a map. So Priya, to answer your question, what I knew, and just talking about that part where 50% of the time I spent on is thinking. The early part of this was I wanted to paint a map, a big map of Bangalore, and put more such things than what I've put in that 90s Bangalore. Like, can I put everything? Because I'm this consultant again, right? I have to give the CEO everything, but I have to make it presentable. So it started
Mhm.
off like that, Priya. But then what happened was, it's funny, right? And I had this grid, and and I'm this rational guy. The map can be the map. I cannot change the map of Bangalore to make it convenient to my what I want to put. So I put it, and I'm like, all the things I wanted to paint were within the four Kempegowda towers. And suddenly
Uh-huh.
I'm like, what am I going to paint outside? Right. And it just, and I'm telling you this organically, I started thinking like, wow, that is how we have expanded. you know like Heritage Bangalore was this largely within these four Kempegowda towers, and everything outside is really, is newly built, because Bangalore was not any kingdom. And this is where I got introduced to Arun Pai through online. And art is a very lonely thing. So people like you and Arun who do these podcasts, the artists like me listening to you all, so please do keep doing this. And
Wonderful.
so I was like, literally like shelving off this project, right, Priya? Because I cannot have like, everything clustered in this little small space. And then, or I didn't want to change the map of Bangalore for my convenience. And then I happened to see this video of Arun talking about the floods in Bangalore, and he was talking about all these lakes, and lakes have been in the news for a long time. I've been seeing a lot of YouTube videos and all the good work about restoration. And suddenly, from one thing, I went to an idea around like, how about I just make this a green and blue Bangalore? So the entire BBMP map, if I just assume that every square foot is an overemphasized or exaggerated green space or blue space, then I can nicely fill my map. And luckily for me, a lot of these green and blue spaces are associated with heritage stuff, right? So just to go into a little detail for your audience, in the Hebbal Lake, you have the Kitaya stone, where supposedly the earliest reference to Bengaluru is there. There is the Begur, which is in the south, happens to be
Yeah.
outside the Kempegoda Towers, and you have the temple, and that again has hero stones referring to, right. And then you're talking about green space, and for me, a green space is West End Hotel. As a kid, I
Yes.
associate that hotel with with birds and greenery, and then I talk about golf course, which is a green space in itself. The Indian Institute of Sciences, it's got so many, and the Aranya Bhavan nearby. It's a green space. So suddenly, then I got, as you can see how my brain thinks, I filled up the map. It was very easy for me. So I've got, so now this mural or this 39 canvas installation is called Greener and Bluer Bangalore. And each canvas celebrates this green space or a lake. And then it, of course, in my characteristic bird's signature, I've either put a bird or I've put a heritage. And I hope it, what it does is it just lets us think a little bit of the future, that I've overemphasized this, but let's try to at least keep preserve them and see how we can enhance them, right? And I think it's just, yeah, that's how that project evolved, and I'm very excited to show everyone. I've shown it to Arun and Ravi and a few others, and people have been very. I mean, again, connecting to that whole, and like I said, it's very organically evolved, right? And I still have the four Kempegoda towers, so it shows how BBMP has expanded more than tenfold from the original Kempegoda towers.
Indeed, indeed. When you talk about relating to this, I think there's a deep ache within people from Bangalore who've grown up or spent a large part of their life here or have always been here. There's a connection it's like you can't see the wood for the trees, right? When you are when you're so close. So for me, if you remember the conversation we first had, what I kind of resonated with was the ability to emote, create, represent, but still come in some ways from the outside to the inside.
Yeah,
So in some ways, I think you, Santosh, have shown us what we've been missing or what we have missed or what we have not meshed together because we've been on the inside.
correct.
Your unique position of inside outside suddenly sort of put things in a little bit of place, and it made you think, so I'm looking at this and said, oh, I've forgotten that was there. Why? Because we are so consumed with what's going, that
Absolutely.
you don't realize in 5 or 10 years you're going to have the building which is next to me is High Point. It's the oldest set of flats in Bangalore, reasonably ugly, but it is 75 years old. In 5 or 10 years it's going to be a heritage building. In
Yeah,
another 25 or 30 years, UB City is also going to be a heritage building.
correct.
So what we are missing is that we are also evolving. And if you ask me,
Correct.
UB City is already heritage because it's become such a defining part of
True.
our city
Yeah,
landscape. That's probably what Unity Building was some time back, or
correct.
Utility Building. So the ebb and flow of what constitutes memory and heritage for a 90s kid or for a 2010 kid or for a 70s kid is very different. But it eventually all sort of, you know, gets into that little thing, and like layers of a flower just keep getting closer and closer and then go into your heart, because that's what you want to remember, because that's
Absolutely.
what your life and memories are about, wrapped so closely around the city you grew up in, the open spaces that you went to, the movies that you saw, the cultural events that you attended, because that's integral to your love for the city. And I mean, from Heritage Beku, I know that we have moved a lot from this very emotive aspect to a action concept as well. We have tried, but it's hard. And what artists and thinkers like yourself do realize is that with greater explorations like this, you're able to bring together people to apply themselves to what really Bangalore means to them.
Yeah.
Because I will look at it and think differently from what X or Y will think. Somebody will ask you, why isn't that there? Because that's my memory of the city.
Correct.
Uh, and so on and so forth. And
Yeah.
perhaps a Santosh Mahale 20 years from now is going to be doing an entirely different uh, rendering of Bangalore. I loved what you said about the green and blue because I wondered, and I think you mentioned it, but I forgot that. But it is such an important part. The green of Bangalore, which is so integral to Bangalore, the blue of Bangalore, which was so integral and has been destroyed
Yes.
so effortlessly. You know, and people like Naresh and others are trying to bring it back with the Raja Kaluves and the linking of the stormwater, etc. So there is work. And what I love about Bangalore and about thinking, I'm being terribly, sort of patting ourselves on the back on this, but I'm sure you'd relate is the way that we just will not give up. There are things
Yeah.
that we can't control, but what we can really try, we really are. Whether it is a Janta Bazaar that was about to come down if we hadn't moved in quickly, even in Mysore, Lansdowne and Devraj Market, these are places that we've
Yeah.
tried. So many initiatives from our side are also policy related stuff, town and
Correct.
country planning,
Yes.
working on property tax, etc. But those are the more boring things. But boring or not, the fact still remains that these need to be done while the aesthetics and the goodness and the heart of the city is also preserved. So that's
Yes.
a difficult balance to maintain. Yeah.
It is.
Santosh,
It
we
is.
are yeah. This is really your conversation, and I've been chatting just as much as you did. I'm sorry for
No, no, it's
taking over a bit of the conversation. I wanted to check with you. I mean, if there was a couple of questions before we, and I'd like to have your thoughts on closing as well. But um, what would you, as a person who understands the space, loves the city, uh, what would you suggest or advise a citizen initiative like Heritage Beku to be more relevant to both the stakeholders of the citizens, the government, other participants who can make a difference? What do you think your thoughts are? We have so many tools and so many things to use, but how do we do it?
Yeah, well, just go back to the quote you mentioned earlier, and I think it all starts with awareness. So, I think, just as all influencers on Instagram or anywhere else on social media, they're all, I think the way to success is that your first step is to bring awareness, and it's almost like you're not asking anyone to do anything but just absorb and perhaps think, right? And then I think when there's a critical mass or a tipping point where there's a certain section of the population feeling that, it becomes easier to then share the message and collectively come up with a solution. So my and I think I don't want to be in a position to give you advice, but I feel just like you catching on to me and taking this two steps to do this, I think is a small check to perhaps, hopefully there's someone there who will go back to Lalbagh and see the buildings a bit more carefully now that they've seen my artwork, or someone in Malleshwaram doesn't just take what we have, the heritage here for granted, and so it's I think these little things of awareness just is perhaps the things that you and everyone else are doing. And like you said, it's a complex topic, and I say this because Australia as well, this is it's a sensitive, in the end it's money, it's someone's property, they don't know what to do with it, so it's very complicated. But I think, I don't want to say that there are places including Mumbai and Calcutta and other cities in the world have found some happy balance. I think the right thing is, Priya, is how do we bring these like-minded folks and corporates and whatnot, and how do we, you talked about laws, and how does the government incentivize the likes of these people who are willing to give some of their donations or endowments to something like this. How does the government facilitate that, right? So I think there are multiple layers, but I think you're doing the right thing in terms of just spreading awareness first. And thanks for educating me as well. Like I said, when I went to Lalbagh, Krombegal Hall wasn't there. I knew about Krumbegal, but I knew about and I was actually doing in-depth research of all the other buildings, many others which are nearly in ruins. And I was very happy to paint this one because it's almost like, how did I miss that kind of a feeling I
Yeah.
have. And
You will miss one more thing if you go back. There's a gigantic baobab tree which is coming, from overseas. It's one of the two trees that are left in Bangalore. It's a
wow,
gigantic tree. If I show you the picture, you'll remember. It just died last year. They did
oh my god,
everything they could to bring it back, but they just couldn't. It was eaten up from the inside. And there's one tree which is left now in Cubbon Park, which the High Court has completely enclosed with some building and whatever else. And we're doing everything we can to say, please, that's the only one that's left. Let's preserve it. So there will be stuff on an ongoing basis. And hopefully, Santosh, we will also have people like you who will tell the stories as they meant to be told, not as dry press, little items
yeah,
that come in news, but in vibrant, engaging ways that remind people to see with their eyes, but feel with their heart,
yeah.
on what this means.
And Priya,
Uh,
just if I sorry to interrupt, but maybe just
no,
one
no,
other
please.
idea came on my. Today Bangalore has become a global hub. I was so impressed that even like the state in which I belong to, like Karnataka, Victoria, has an office in Bangalore. So my other suggestion to Heritage Beku is, you know, connect with this expat network. Every city in the world has the same problem, and they've all found some way. And perhaps Bangalore can leapfrog from all those learnings instead of going the same 10 steps. So I think my other, if I can give you, is just and I tried to do that, as you know, but the Australians here, they couldn't bring someone at the short notice. But Melbourne, for an example, has very strong heritage laws, and they do it beautifully. Again, because of the gold rush, we had a lot of good buildings, and nothing is touched. And even if you own a house, you just can't do anything to the facade. You can
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can beautify it and modernize it at the back, but the front remains for the observer from the street. Your
yeah.
house looks like it did, how many years back it was built. So my suggestion would be, for you, Aditi, to see how you connect these expats, and they're all here, sitting in Bangalore. They want to also be, helpful,
Part of
right?
it. I hear you. I hear you, Santosh. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a task straight away. So you are now officially head of our Australian expat heritage Beku. Yeah. So
Okay.
let's see whether we can. No, it's not a bad idea. I think it's a
Yeah.
great idea that, we just need to be able to gather up and aggregate, and we will figure out what to do after that. We have
Yeah.
tried this in the UK, but it has been, again, everything is so advanced in the UK. The level of, I mean, I just feel so, so small and so
Yeah.
infinitesimal in the kind of work that we do because UK is out there. So we need to do this. And I think if we get two or three countries involved where there's a very large expat population, there's a connection, there's a relation, there's a sense of understanding that we can go after the small, low-hanging fruits, work on government interventions. For example, some of the work that we've done is on the revised master plan. We must have put in about 700 man hours in our inputs on the revised master plan for Bangalore. It went south because it didn't happen. But I know the kind of effort that went into it. Completely off the topic. What do your in fact, which was the city that you enjoyed most doing? The first one you did was San Francisco, if I remember right. And you've done London, you've done Calcutta, you've done Chennai as well. But which was the one you did first, and which was the one that was meant the most to you?
I think City of Joy, Kolkata.
Yeah,
I think it's just talking about heritage, chat. It's India, city with India's number one density, or quantum of heritage buildings, and then Chennai comes number two. Is just something I learned as part of my research. But I think in Kolkata, it's almost like you're going to a foreign land. You're in India, but like everything seems different, right? From the taxis to the fact that hand pulled rickshaws are
tram.
still there, the tram, and you really feel like perhaps I'm biased a bit to the 80s, 90s. You feel like the 80s world is frozen, and and so I really had joy painting that city, because it had everything and more. It was very challenging of which buildings I select out of the thousands of buildings, but there was beauty in even doing those rustic North Calcutta homes, and I think, and the other reason why I enjoyed painting Calcutta is, as part of the composition, I spent some time, I really give it some thought, like what colors would represent that city, right? So, like, just to give an example, my conclusion for Bangalore was some Haldi Kumkum version, right? Something like like something like there was with the green spaces, and then for Chennai, it was more yellow. It could be influenced by the the IPL or not, but it was. And for Kolkata, it was a no-brainer. It would be shades of red, right? Like, and I enjoyed that part as well. And then I could the way I used the whole painting is in shades of red, and I've never done I've never used that kind of palette. I use very limited because there's so many things in my painting. I'm very careful how many
You don't
colors
want
I
to
use.
distract. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I it looks like there are a lot of colors, Priya, but I just use three or four hues, and then I mix them to get everything else that's there on the what you see. But so that's another reason I enjoyed painting Kolkata, and Kolkata will be along with all these other cities you mentioned at
Yeah.
Bird's Eye Bangalore, and I hope people feel inspired to go visit Calcutta if they're not
Yeah,
visited.
wonderful. Coincidentally, we have had a similar initiative to Bangalore is the Calcutta Architectural Legacy. It's called CAL. And
Okay.
in fact, the promoter of that is right now in Bangalore. Today is the 10th, right? He's here today. So we're supposed to meet to see whether we could, interact and sort of do best practices,
Yeah.
learn from each other, because they've done some extraordinary work in trying to
Yes.
create a heritage precinct and, try to be, sort of push the citizen kind of perspective along. So it's interesting you mentioned Calcutta. Um, while I'm going to encourage everyone, to visit your wonderful exhibition, I'm looking forward to it too, Santosh. I have not seen it, as you know, I've only seen the pictures of it, but I'm looking forward to, those 39 images, the different depictions that you have, and the birds, which are so vibrant and so beautiful. And this is at Chitrakala Parishad on between the 20th of November and the 1st of December. Am I right? That's the
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just down the road from where I am. So you can expect to see me at the earliest sort of drinking up all the
I
sights
look
and
forward.
the feel of memories of the city. A last question before you go. How does your family feel about it? You have a 9-year-old and you have your wife who's looking at a completely different avatar of their dad and of their husband. So what's the
They just wait. I mean, it's not been easy, but I think very extremely supportive. Obviously, I wouldn't have come this far. I think it's like I said, there's a tipping point after which it's hard for an artist to hold back, and because I crossed that tipping point sometime mid last year when I did my first solo show. It went well, and I'm like, this there is something in it for me. It's hard to balance, and I've got a lot to learn. So my family is obviously, if they want obviously a part of my old me, an old consultant, even though if consulting was busy, it's nothing like how art busy can be. But Priya, on I think generally overall, I couldn't have been here without their support. So I think what I have to promise myself and them is, to use the next 6 months to find that happy balance, right? To see how there could be some sort of a steady state that can come through this, and
that
yeah,
balances? Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Do they want their walls back?
Walls black? Oh, back?
Do they
No.
want their walls back?
Oh no, that we have made. I'm married now 14 years, so we have made peace because when we married, and my wife knew this, so we said we're not going to buy any two-dimensional art because I've just got such a backlog of places to paint. So we ended up collecting masks. So what we do is every place we go, we try and collect something authentic, not just a craft, but if possible, and if we can afford it, like some sort of a heritage or unique mask representing that place. And that way, we say we'll stay away from artwork on our walls. That's all for me. And But no, so I made peace with that. Now it's just that I think all my walls are full, so I need to spread the love out.
No, no, I think Bangalore and the rest of the world is eager and ready to receive. So I'm going to close with thank you, all who have dialed in and are on this call. But thank you, Santosh, for reaching out. Just as I was leaving to Rishikesh. In fact, it was a landmark birthday, and I had a whole lot of stuff that I was doing. I was revisiting my birthplace. So for me, it was a memory thing again. And I visited memories of my parents and it felt really good. So I could relate to what you were saying. And when we came back, I think we had a wonderful conversation, as great as we had just now, where we've talked, we've meandered, we've explored, we've kind of, sort of thrown the
Just like my
lobby
artwork,
back
we've
and
gone
forth. Yeah.
everywhere, and hopefully,
We've gone everywhere. And I'm glad that you've done this. I'm glad that you have applied yourself to this unique kind of coming together of mind and heart and matter and brush to make this possible, because I think this is going to be something that I hope more people will resonate with and more people will find different interpretations of. There could be a musical version of this. There could be,
yeah,
a theatrical version of this
yeah,
that will come through. In fact, we had a wonderful theatrical thing last year for Unboxing Bangalore, where we had a group of artists, including Suresh Yaram, where the hero of the piece, on Krumbigal Hall, the fall of Krumbigal Hall, was
okay,
spoken through a broken, genuinely broken, a piece of the Krumbigal Hall pillar. It broke my heart to see it.
wow,
It was thrown away. So he had kept that one piece. It was lying outside and he brought it. And the whole piece was around that. So here was a piece of history speaking to us through these theatrical artists. So we have so many ways of exploring and, touching on heritage and reviving. So good luck with the exhibition. We can't wait to see
thank you.
this and hope to have many, many, more interactions and more pieces that come out of your love for Bangalore, which is clearly there, and your nostalgia for the city and your appreciation for what is still there now. You said that Kaban Park is one of the few places that are actually better than what you remember, which was really nice to hear.
Yes.
Um,
Thanks to you
so,
again, the dog park, and all the people, all the movements. I know it's been many people who have fought for those walking paths and traffic curfews and whatnot. So,
oh my God, yeah, yeah. I mean, Kaban Park has been among many things that we've become. I hate the word activist, but we've just. I think Bangalore needs people to fight for her, and Bangalore needs all of us, in her armory, honestly. So to heritage, to Bangalore, to art, and to you, Santosh, all the very best. And thank you so
thank
much
you.
for being with us. And thank you so much for investing your time and your creativity to a completely different memory project of Bangalore.
My
So we'll
pleasure, and thanks to you.
thank you, Santosh. And thank you, everyone else, for being here and have a great week ahead. Santosh, good luck with the exhibition. Can
Thank you,
I
guys. Bye
say bye
bye.
for now? Bye
Bye
bye.
bye for now. Thanks all.